I saw a beam of light everywhere. And then the moment I saw those beam of light, I thought to myself, the rapture is here.
It's like in the corner of her eyes, seeing like a little boy or like a little ghost going to one of the rooms.
It's a journey in the self too, because you find your intuition and discernment. But we got to realize that there's duality here.
Maybe 6 or 8 times over the course of a couple of years, I would wake up to this dark figure standing at the foot of my bed.
The green agenda is the obliteration of the human soul. They use children to do that. They can't do it without children. They need pure souls, and you cannot conduct a black mass without pure souls.
When you see that there's darkness, Satan exists, or that there's evil on earth, or that there's actually demons or whatever, I think it's a frequency we're all together, really.
The light started like flicking off and on. So it was like a toddler, like a 5-year-old or 4-year-old.
At one point it started to gruff. I heard howls. I heard like this puffing sound, and I was petrified. I had no idea what it was.
Well, the demons are here, and they are going to steal the children.
To the show, everybody. You're listening to Apocalyptic Anomalies, where we shine light on the shadows to unlock all the secrets of our universe. I'm your host, Abner J. Valdés. If you have a crazy experience or story you want to share on the show, email me at apocalypticanomalies@gmail.com. That's apocalypticanomalies@gmail.com. Or you can hit me up on Instagram or Facebook. Either way works for me. Just get in contact with me. Today on the show, we have Michael. He comes on the show and shares his Dogman encounter. So let's get into the show right now. Sit back and enjoy the show. So welcome to the show, everybody. Today on the show, we have Michael. Michael, can you tell people, the audience, a brief bio about yourself, please?
Sure. I am 64 years old, worked 22 years in Washington, D.C. as a federal security contractor with a top secret clearance. My family moved down to southeastern North Carolina, coastal North Carolina, almost 18 years ago. So I was commuting back and forth. I'd be up there for a couple of weeks, and then I'd come home for 4 days and head back up early in the morning, which is when I had my encounter. It was about, around 5 a.m. January. And I live in a what's called a semi-rural area. There are a lot of farms and pasture land, cornfields and whatnot around, interspersed with woods and rivers and streams and whatnot. And it's about 5 a.m. thereabouts, a little before, a little after somewhere. And I was going down a particular road, maybe 3-4 miles from my house. And as I went around a curve, my high beams illuminated a creature, large. I'm a good sized guy. I'm 6'2", I weigh about 250 pounds. It was larger than me. It was crouched down just off the road, maybe 10 feet, 15 feet. Initially, I thought it was further than that, but when I went back and looked again, that's all the further it was. Well, let me just say my headlights are very bright. So the reaction it had when my headlights splashed across it was to do this. And clearly you could see that there were fingers. There was long gray hair that was hanging down off of the arm. Now I'd like to say that I was brave enough to stop and check it out. However, I drive a little 2-door sports car, a little Miata with a cloth top. And my brain said, okay, this is a little car. That's a big creature. Let's keep going. And I wasn't expecting to see anything, so I didn't have my cell phone at the ready to take a video or snap a picture, because why would I? Normally that time of the morning, I'm listening to something, on the radio or whatever, not expecting to see anything. This area has a lot of wildlife. There are bears, there are coyotes, foxes, raccoons, turkeys, all kinds of stuff. You might see them. Not expecting to see something that was considerably larger than myself. It was just a matter of seconds, but it was clear. And then next time down, I made a particular point to look at that area to make sure there were no bushes, no stumps, no trees, nothing. It had been planted as a cornfield. It had been harvested, and there was nothing but stubble there. So it wasn't as if I could have mistaken it for something, maybe a bush or something, and thought I saw something else. There was nothing else there to see but that.
Wow. And what do you think you saw? What do you think, in your opinion, what do you think that was?
Initially, the first thought was Dogman. I suppose it's possible it was a Sasquatch, but it didn't seem as large as what I would expect a Sasquatch to be. And then, the fingers, in my recollection, were kind of more tapered and clawed more than what you'd expect something like a Sasquatch to look like. And again, this was a fast,
right,
thing. I saw it, turned my head, and then kept going. I was probably going 55, maybe even 60 miles an hour. But it was enough that I got a fairly good look at it.
Yeah. And how tall, how big did you think this creature was when you saw it?
Well, I mean, it's hard to estimate because it was crouched down, right. But it was definitely larger than I would have been crouched down in the same position. So I'm thinking it had to be well over 6 feet.
Wow. That's amazing.
It was 2 weeks before I mentioned it to anybody. I told my wife about it, and I expected skepticism, but she loves me. So even if she was skeptical, she didn't make fun of me or anything.
Yeah, that's always good to have somebody on your side, kind of.
Yeah, I drew a sketch and showed her what I saw, and I wish that I knew what happened to that sketch, but I don't know where it is.
Right. Yeah.
And
you said when the creature went like this with his hand, right?
Yep.
You said you saw some hair coming off of it. What color do you think that was?
It was long gray hair covering the whole thing, but what was in my mind, it was like draped.
Yes.
Coming down off of the arm, it was hanging on there, so it was something with, fairly long hair on it.
Wow.
And I did talk to some people online a while after that, and I don't know, it was a forum of some type. And there were 2 other people who live, I don't know, probably within a 10-mile radius of where I'm at, who had similar sightings, and their descriptions were very similar to my own. So I wasn't the only one who saw this. We had no, there was no acquaintance. We didn't know each other.
Wow. A follow-up question on that. My opinion, right? When you had the high beams on, that you flashed the high beams. In my opinion, that is some type of intellectual creature because
deer don't move, right?
Yeah, the deer kind of stay still, right? Their eyes kind of stay still and they just focus on whatever's coming at them. But this kind of put his arm up, right?
Yep.
So it tells you it's not a dumb creature,
Right.
And it's pretty amazing because a lot of people say that dogmen creatures are very smart. They're very astute animals, So when people have encounters, they say they're not dumb. They're definitely not, stopping in their tracks. They're more in the, apex predator category. So definitely something to kind of block his eyes to see what's coming at him. Kind of like a human in a way,
Yeah.
Kind of has like that intellect. That's an amazing encounter, man. I wish there was more that you could share with us. And I know we spoke briefly on a different shot we did. I just figured I'd have you come on and keep the conversation flowing. I think we talked briefly about last conversation about Linda Godfrey that you mentioned.
Yeah.
What can you tell us in the audience about that?
Well, I had, I think I made a comment, I believe on Facebook, and she actually messaged me and asked if it was okay if she contacted me to discuss this, and we did. And I think it's in one of her books. that she had spoken to me. I don't know if she used my name or not. She told me that she had encounters, and she'd never given it a lot of thought until she lived up in Wisconsin, and she was the one who wrote the book Beast of Bray Road, and which really started a whole, a lot of people looking and a lot of people coming forward and talking about their encounters they'd had, whether it was more upright, close, personal than what I had, or just something they'd seen, or whether it had come and looked in their window or whatever.
Yeah. She
did mention a particular incident where she was going to go somewhere, I don't recall where, to meet up with some people for some type of search. And she said she remembers going past a field, and she just looked out the window and she saw a large stump and didn't think anything of it. And she said on the way back, when she passed that same field, the stump was no longer there. She said, so what that tells her is so often that your brain will believe what you want, what you expect to see. It's a field, I see a stump. That, what I see, I don't know what it is, but it's a stump. Right. But when she went back, there was no stump. So whatever it had been was some type of creature. She said, I couldn't tell you if it was a Sasquatch or whatever, but it was a living creature that was there. It definitely wasn't a human. It was, dark. Not the lighting, but whatever she saw was dark, which is what made her believe it was a stump originally. No, it's my dog who wants attention.
That's okay.
Here,
what kind of dog is it?
They're mutts. They're a couple of rescues we had gotten. This woman had was it 23 dogs, Sonny? 27 dogs. And she kept them outside, and she would just put food in a trough, and it was first come, first serve, and they were little small pups. So somebody called, I guess, animal protection, and they came and confiscated all the dogs. And we picked these two up, and dumb as a box of rocks, both of them, but they're still our dogs.
You know what, though? Mutts are the best dogs, I think,
We had a yellow lab, and I was going to say she qualifies as the best dog I ever had.
You like yellow labs? That's cool.
Well, she was so intelligent, and she understood so many different commands and words. If you told her to do something, she would do it. She knew how to. If you'd say speak, she would bark. If you'd say yell, she'd bark louder. If you say whisper, she would just go. So she understood the difference between those things.
Very intelligent.
She was, and she was sweet-tempered. If you didn't tell her to bark, she didn't bark. She was so sweet-tempered that if a burglar came in the house, she would want to be their friend.
Jeez.
Yeah. I mean,
maybe not the best attack dog.
Not the best attack dog, but she
was
a
good family dog.
Yeah,
sure.
She was.
Yeah.
She was.
That's great, man. Awesome. So going back to what we were talking about, so in your opinion, do you think these dogmen, right, are physical creatures, or are they kind of like interdimensional creatures, in your opinion?
I think they're physical creatures. Nothing I've read that I felt was credible would lead me to believe otherwise. What I saw certainly was something that was solid, flesh and blood. I don't know. I mean, I've read things where people, some of it, they speak as if it's theory, and other people speak as if they have firsthand knowledge. Of course, they don't. There are people who will give you these long descriptions of all the characteristics of a dog man, and they're this and they're that. Like, how do you know that?
Right.
And I feel there are just something that has lived here and was smart enough to know that it didn't want to interact with humans.
Mm.
And I'm sure there are probably incidents and stories of when they have, and it probably didn't turn out well for the dog man or the humans.
Yeah, and I feel like in your case, your encounter was pretty calm. Because a lot of people talk about these encounters and they're really frightening and everything. Do you feel some type of fear when you saw this thing, or was it just like
I really did
shock?
Yeah, more shocking than fearful. Obviously I surprised it as well. But I've read things where they're supposedly able to keep up with a car that's going certainly the speed I was going. But I looked in the mirror. I didn't see it pursuing me. And probably 3/4 of a mile from where I was, maybe a mile, there's a traffic light. And of course the light was red and I stopped and nothing approached me. I didn't see anything.
Yeah. And like you said too, right? I feel like these things have been around for quite some time. And going back to like the Egyptian days, right? A lot of people like they talk about dog gods or whatever,
Sure.
kind of like Anubis and stuff like that. Do you feel like that could be something that came from an ancient time and still lives with us now?
Yeah. And I believe, I think this is in the Bible. If not, it's like Dead Sea Scrolls, where there are stories of one of the saints who claimed he interacted with a dog-headed man people, and he said they growled and everything else, but apparently they were able to make themselves understood, and they didn't do him any harm. But I believe that's in the Old Testament, and if it's not there, then it's part of Dead Sea Scrolls or some writings from that time. And there's a specific saint, I don't remember which one, who wrote of this. It's not unknown. A lot of people are aware of this.
Yeah, and I heard something. I don't know. I think I heard this in a podcast, but these gentlemen were discussing how there was some type of dogman-like creature that became some type of priest or something like that. I don't know if you've heard of that. Some type of like holy man.
And it could be.
Which was kind of strange to me. It's like it's a little weird because it's that tells you that they're not as dumb as people may think, because a lot of people probably see them as like a different like an animal or whatever, like a dog or something. But it tells you that according to these ancient texts and how you said the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Bible and stuff, it kind of tells you that they've been around for some time.
They've been around, and the thing is, it's not just in America. Europeans have this. Some of the Asian countries have this. I believe Africa has had some sort. I don't know what part, but it's not like this is something that just came about in the last 50 years. There are stories of this. I mean, Native Americans have all kinds of stories. And not the skinwalkers, but actual. They knew about Sasquatch. They knew about Dogman, and they have names for them. Sasquatch is not an English word. It's not a French word, but it's what they're known by in North America. So these creatures have been around, for, I'm guessing, thousands of years at a minimum.
Right. And it's kind of crazy too how they put a lot of things in movies, right? Like they give it the Hollywood perception of it, like werewolves, dogmen, right? It's like there's reasons why they do these things, right? They even have things like that in like, superheroes, like a Wolverine type of man's animal dog type thing, and it kind of indicates something like they have been around, It's really popular in pop culture, right? They kind of try to make it popular and famous. So it kind of indicates towards that, Same thing with Sasquatch too, right?
Right.
They put it in things like Star Wars, right?
Well,
like,
yeah.
Why?
Look at the Wookiees. They certainly look like Sasquatch.
Right, and Chewbacca too, right?
Yeah.
And they make it friendly. It almost makes it seem like they're trying to hint at us something. Like we're gonna put it right in their face, and they're not even gonna know, So it's very interesting stuff. What else can you tell us about things that you've read about and with Dogman or Sasquatch. I'm gonna let you kind of talk about this. Go for it.
It just seems like they are somewhat territorial, and there are people who have described seeing families of them, and obviously adolescent and smaller, and there are those who claim they have seen female, then they have more pronounced breasts than the men do, dogmen, and
Sure, yeah.
they seem to often be around water, which, I mean, so do humans. Civilizations, cities have always been around water. We don't know if they are roadkill eaters. Apparently, there are people who've seen them eating roadkill. I'm assuming they're hunters. And if they're smart enough to do some of the things we've heard, then that could also explain why we're not finding any dead carcasses, because they would take those away.
Right. It's very interesting. It's like, what else can we really say about that? There's so many people that talk about this, so it's like it's something that is real. There's too many people having encounters for it not to be real.
Did you look at that map I told you about, the cloaked hedgehog?
No, I have not. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, this was a Swedish woman named Anna. Oh, what is her last name?
Larson. Yes, I wrote it down.
And she spent years talking to people online about their experiences. And then she made a map that you can find on Google of basically the whole world. And she has placed a little red flag at everywhere these sightings occurred, at least the ones that she had been made aware of. And then she's written a little bit about each encounter. So it's interesting that you can go there and see differences and similarities between descriptions or exactly what happened. Interestingly enough, well, obviously if they were, they'd be survivors, but nobody ever actually got attacked.
Yeah. And that was going to be another question I have for you too. What are your thoughts on the massacre in the LBL? What are your thoughts on that? Because I have a book that I'm trying to read. I think I told you about last time.
Yeah, and from my recollection is that was debunked because so many of the things that they claimed as fact, they can't find anybody who can back any of that up. There's no record of police going there or ambulances or anything like the story says, but there's no record of it. And there have been people who've gone there, and some of the locations cited in the story, they can't locate those. I mean, it's an actual place, but specific things that they mentioned, they just couldn't find them. And I'm trying to think if there was one story I heard, there was a survivor, a little girl or something, and another one I heard the little girl's body was, in a tree. But it just seemed like when they really tried to find any sort of factual evidence, there just wasn't any.
Right.
It was more like somebody just said, either they made the story up or they say, hey, this is a really spooky location, and what if this happened here? And next thing you know, what if went to it did happen.
Yeah. And have you heard any dogmen encounters like on podcasts or stories like that? Is there one that sticks out to you that you might want to share with us in the audience right now?
There was one I recall of this woman who said that they would come in her yard. She had a farm, and they would come in their yard just about the edge of where their floodlights would illuminate, and they go right to about the edge of it. They could see them, but not real well. And they seemed to just want to let them know, we're here, we could get you if we wanted to. And I recall, I don't know if it was that particular one or one similar to it, where the kids would be followed. They'd be, you know,
Wow.
twilight or whatever. They're out playing in the woods or in the fields, and they could tell something was following. They could see movement in the brush, but nothing came out. And I believe a couple of times, you know, faster you walk, whatever's following you also moves faster. They run, it runs.
Right.
And then I believe they said that this particular instance, they came into the yard and, you know, to the house, but didn't make any real attempt to get in the house.
Wow.
And then there are those who claim that they found tracks on their roof in the snow where that something had been on their roof, you know, apparently playing and making noise, stomping on their roof. And then they found tracks that, you know, were barefoot tracks with claws, certainly not human feet.
Yeah.
And
it almost feels like they like to put fear into people. Like
I think they enjoy playing.
Yeah, like, look, I can get you if I want, but I won't, you know?
Yeah, and then there's a story I heard where, I think I read this one, where they were recounting a story of their uncle or grandfather or somebody, where they had a hunting cabin, and they would go out there for like a week every year during hunting season, and then they were, I don't know if actually attacked, but kind of threatened by what they described as a pack of dogmen, and allegedly they shot one and killed it. But the only problem with that is, where's the body? And did you take pictures? But then again, this was also before cell phones. I think most people probably don't take a camera with them when they go hunting, but maybe they do. Some people might, you know, I don't know. But those were some that I had read that kind of stuck with me.
Yeah, it almost feels like sometimes when those things happen, like an accident happens or something, that's the last thing you really think about is like, let me pull out a camera, let me take a picture. It's like, you're so in the moment that it's all the trauma or the adrenaline's pumping, and you're just like, okay, what do I have to do to get out of this situation or make it disappear? You know?
Right.
So,
and there's some books. In fact, there's a documentary that doesn't specifically say Sasquatch or Dogman, but about the number of hikers and hunters that disappear every year. And they tend to be, I mean, different parts of the country, but specifically it seems like there were like 8 or 10 places where this happened a lot. No trace ever found of them. And maybe it's a serial killer. Maybe they fall off, into a deep ravine and nobody ever finds them. But it wasn't always just one person.
Right. Which is very interesting, you know?
Yeah, and there's speculation that, you know, hey, maybe the opportunity was there. They're isolated and they were just snatched.
Yeah. It almost gets you thinking all these missing people in the woods, right? All these 411 missing people. It's like, well, what can it be? You know, can it be people really snatching people up? Or can it be dogmen, you know, or Sasquatch, you know? It's like, nobody really knows because there's not enough evidence to find these people, you know? It almost seems like they just disappear, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, there are allegedly photos of them in neighborhoods. As I said, my encounter was like, I don't know, 4 miles from the house. And there's a lot of woods behind me.
Relatively close, too.
Relatively close.
Yeah.
Sometimes when I let my dogs out at night, one of the dogs, she's just got anxiety issues. Sometimes she didn't want to get off the deck, and she hasn't been out in hours. Yeah. But the other one is very much, he's always ready to go outside. And there's times when they don't want to get off the deck at night. And, you know, he might venture into the yard close to the deck, and then he'll pee and then run back up and scratching at the door, let me in. So, you know, we usually go out with them, and we'll, like at night, we have a high power flashlight, and we'll shine it along the edge of the tree line. And sometimes we see eyes, and that might be a raccoon. It could be deer. I don't know. But I know when they see an animal that they're familiar with, it's, you know, a possum or deer or something, you know, they chase. But there's times when they just refuse. They won't go out there. And I don't know what that is. Might be nothing, but whatever it is scares them enough that they don't want to go.
Yeah, definitely. And are you team Dogman or team Sasquatch? Which one do you prefer?
Oh, Dogman, of course.
All right, cool, man. That's awesome. Yeah, I had another question. Were you always interested in like the cryptid, or when did that start for you? At what age would you say?
I've always liked horror films, and I never really thought about Dogman or werewolves or any of that stuff being real until I saw the book Beast of Bray Road, and that piqued my interest. But I never went looking for anything. I know there are people who, you know, develop such a passion that, you know, 1 time, 3 times, 4 times a year, they will go out looking for them, whether it's Sasquatch or Dogman. And I don't think necessarily. Have you ever watched any of the programs on TV? These people make so much noise that anything else knows they're there.
I've seen a lot of stuff, like even when people go hunting for Sasquatch, they do the knocks and they make themselves be known. It's like, well, these creatures tend to be more private, like if they don't want nobody knowing where they live or something like that. So it's like, you're trying to find it, you're not going to find it like that, you know?
But I mean, you know, I have, actually, I'll be honest, I used to read a comic Marvel put out called Werewolf by Night. That was set in the 70s. They've brought it back 2 or 3 times since, and, you know, it'll be popular for a little while, then they'll cancel it, then they'll bring it back.
Right.
But since I saw that, I find myself reading a lot of Dogman or werewolf style novels. And I mean, it's entertainment. It's not like I expect to go find that again. And it wouldn't surprise me if I never saw anything ever again. When people tell me I've had 5 or 6 encounters, and I'm always like, really? I mean, it's possible. I can't say they don't. Right. I just don't think that when you go looking for them, you're going to see them unless they want you to see them.
Right.
If you have a farm and they live in a portion of your farm, a wooded area, maybe they come accustomed enough to you that maybe then, you know, their curiosity is piqued and they, you know, they want to become more acquainted with you, I guess.
Right. Right. What is your favorite horror movie, since you're talking about horror films?
Oh, man. Probably The Thing with Kurt Russell.
Okay.
You ever seen that one?
The Thing with Kurt Russell? Nah, probably not.
It came out in the 80s. It was a remake of one that came out in the 50s.
I'm going to write this down.
And it's an alien. They find his... I guess his saucer frozen in the ice in the Antarctic. There's a research station there, and then they cut this block of ice that has a man in there, and then when it thaws enough, the thing reanimates, and it morphs into different things. It can look like anybody. But
oh wow,
I get a chance to watch it. It's pretty good.
The Thing by Kurt Russell. I wrote it down.
Russell. John Carpenter. I think John Carpenter may have directed that. In the original one, the guy who played. You ever watch Gunsmoke? Marshall Dillon. No, you're so young. Anyway, the guy who played Marshall Dillon was in the original one. And then there was a prequel to it more than a couple years ago, maybe 5, 8 years ago. And they're doing a remake of it. So it'll be coming out again within a year or 2. Yeah. That's good. And of course, I like the classic black and whites, you know, Dracula, Creature from the Black Lagoon.
Yeah, I've seen those. I haven't seen the movies, but I've seen clips with the old school black and white ones. Yeah.
Well, something about black and white, you know, it's just little spookier. That's kind of hokey, and like the Dracula one, they have armadillos in Transylvania. Like, why? There are no armadillos, but whoever was making the movie thought they're weird looking creatures, so let's just throw some in there.
Right.
Lon Chaney's Wolfman movies, the Frankenstein movies, the original ones with what's his name, Boris Karloff.
Probably haven't seen that one either. I think the werewolf movie that I remember watching was with Anthony Hopkins. Yeah, Hopkins.
Benicio del Toro. That was pretty good.
Yeah, that was pretty good. When he turns into the werewolf, I was like, wow, this is intense.
And the original Wolfman movie that this is actually a remake of had oh goodness gracious, Lon Chaney Jr. played the werewolf.
I don't know who that is.
Because you're so young.
I gotta look into that. What's the name again? Long Fairy what?
Well, it's the Wolfman with Lon Chaney Jr. Chaney Jr. He made, I don't know, he made a few of them. In fact, I think he was in most of them. There's a few other guys that may have played him.
It was good because I get some knowledge and I have stuff to see, things to research, you know?
Yeah.
It was a good conversation.
And then there's one that's good that you can probably find it on YouTube. It's called the Werewolf of London. Not an American Werewolf of London, but Werewolf of London. It's an old movie, and the actor's name is Henry Hull.
Okay, let me write that down.
That's definitely a different kind of werewolf movie.
Yeah, definitely gotta look into those. I seen one that was the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Yep.
But it's not. I don't know if it's a werewolf, but it's this monster type of guy, and they're in London, and he's running through the roofs and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, that was.
He turns into like this. Yeah, he turns into like this beast, you know.
Yeah, Mr. Hyde.
But like I always said, like it gets you thinking. Like they put it in movies for reasons, right? Another movie I saw that was pretty interesting too. It's kind of like a horror movie, like a thriller movie. It's called Cabin in the Woods.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end, spoiler alert for anybody that hasn't seen it, it's an old movie, but
that was with Chris Hemsworth, right?
Yeah. Yep. And at the end, they fall down into like the lab where they're making all these creatures. And you see Dogman, you see Sasquatch, you see all these Mothmen, all these cryptids, and you're like, man, it gets you kind of thinking. It's like, and then they're in the woods, and a lot of people tend to see these creatures in the woods. So it's like, can it be something that they're doing? You know, it gets you thinking. It's like possibly, you know.
Now, have you watched The Howling?
No.
Really? Oh man, that's one of the best werewolf movies. Or Dog Soldiers.
Nope. Man, I gotta get on my movie game.
Yeah, you do, man. Everybody, you've seen American Werewolf in London.
No, I haven't. I haven't seen that either.
Yeah, a lot of people think that is the best ever. I didn't actually like it. It's kind of a comedy, and the werewolf doesn't look like a werewolf. It doesn't look like a wolf. I mean, it's like the transformation sequence. Like he's looking at his hand, and his fingers get like this long, you know, and then you see different things happening. You're like, but why would any of that happen? You know, if you're transforming from this to this, that has nothing to do with any of it. Yeah. And then when he's the werewolf, he looks more like an insane Wolverine. Not the comic character, just he doesn't look like a wolf.
I wonder if they would do these movies now with all the CGI and effects, if it would look better, you know?
I don't know. Some people didn't like the Anthony Hopkins Wolfman because they used some CGI and they didn't like it. I thought it was, pretty well done.
Yeah, that was pretty good. Especially it's like in the olden days, you know? And then they seal him up in like a courtroom and he gets out and everything. It's pretty good movie.
I liked it.
Yeah. Would you ever go into the woods, try to look for this thing?
I don't know. If I did, I'd have to be armed. and I wouldn't want to do it by myself, and I'd have to have at a minimum a 10 millimeter handgun, because that's, or something shooting like 300 blackout or 44 Magnum if it was a rifle. Because whatever it is, I'm sure you need some amazing stopping power to put it down.
Yeah. Seems like there's a lot of people that are trying to have these encounters now. You see a lot of people trying to go out into the woods and,
if I'm going to go looking for it, I'm not looking for it necessarily to kill it. That would only be for protection. And I know some people have
I agree with that too.
Saying that they had the intention, if they saw one, they definitely shoot it. I'm like, well, if it's not posing a threat to me, why am I going to shoot it?
Right. I think for me, it's more of the mystery. Like, what is it?
Because you hear about people seeing, but like I said, you don't hear that they're killing people. However, there are people who swear up and down that they are. Like, are they? Right. I don't know. People disappear. Maybe it's that. Maybe it's serial killers. We don't know.
Right. We never know. So, Michael, any final thoughts that you want to talk about here for me and for the audience?
No, nothing really comes to mind. I'm just thinking I relax a little bit because I have to get up at 5.
All right.
But
all right.
Yeah, I got to work.
Cool. Well, yeah. So, Michael, thank you for being on the show. Thank you for being on Apocalyptic Anomalies. Thank you for your time, and God bless. Have a good night.
Thank you, sir. You as well. Enjoy your weekend.
All right. You too. Thank you for watching, everyone. I hope you guys enjoyed that episode. And if you guys can, go to Apple Podcasts and Spotify Podcasts. Follow me on Spotify Podcast. Give me a 5-star review. Same thing with Apple Podcasts, a 5-star review, because it really helps the show. And remember, guys, to share the show, because that's the only way that the podcast will grow. Until next time, everyone, stay safe, stay blessed, and remember to innovate honesty and always illuminate the truth. Bye.